Dave's 5 Hot Takes, yeah!
Welcome back, everybody, to Dave's 5 Hot Takes. This is Dave. I am really excited about this episode. It's actually the second installment in our Q&A episodes, our questions and answers, where I asked you guys to ask me questions. I just realized how redundant that is, that I ask you to ask me questions. And you guys did not fail to deliver. These were really great questions. This one was as fun, if maybe not a little more than the first episode. These are deep dives too. I try to pick the ones that I think everybody can kind of relate to, because there's some really great specific ones in there, but I think some people might get a little cross-eyed and or just uninterested. So I tried to pick some that were kind of fun for everybody. Hopefully, of course, I'm biased because they're basically all fun for me. So I got my smart hat on. I've done some push-ups. I've cried a little bit, and I'm still sweaty. So that means I'm ready to answer some questions. Let's do it. Hot take 1. All right, we're coming in hot with this first hot take. I loved this question. This is actually a question from a dear friend of mine, Parker Welling, who's a songwriter here in Nashville. She's amassing more hits than a bong at Woodstock in her career. She's so good. So I felt really honored that old P-Dubs would ask me this. So thanks a lot, Girlita. Why does Fast Car by Tracy Chapman work? The structure is so bizarre that "you got a fast car" line should not be enough to carry it. All caps. It's a unicorn song. And then tell me why with a million whys. So I think one is just this. So that is just bulletproof acoustic guitar part. One of my, I think, in my opinion, hot take, top 10 acoustic guitar parts of all time. That is absolutely as good as you can write a guitar part. And so I think one, it's just that. I think it's this weird thing where I feel like I could listen to that acoustic guitar part, just those 2 bars or whatever it is, a million times in a row and never get tired of it, which is like finding a diamond in the rough. So I think that's one. I also think it's the juxtaposition of the melody and what the verses are about versus that guitar part. In other words, like the beauty of that guitar part versus this verse that just kind of feels like stream of consciousness singing. I gotta take it anywhere. And look, I'm not saying it's a bad melody. That melody is actually really incredible. But it doesn't feel like the guitar to me. It feels like a whole other song. And then you add the lyric. It's so many words and it's so pedestrian. Like the lyric is not anything that's very profound necessarily. It's just kind of like calling it like you see it, you know? And so I think there's something about that makes it profound. I think if she had tried to write a love song where the melody followed the guitar, it wouldn't be as good because it's too much of one thing. So it's like you kind of you sort of get 2 songs in one. You get this sort of like ranty, super wordy, almost feels very folky verses versus this beautiful guitar part that feels like a distant cousin of yesterday, or Blackbird almost in a weird way. So I think it's the juxtaposition of those things. I also think that is a puzzle that hooks into itself. You know, that those 2 things kind of become this puzzle, this yin and yang that form a perfect circle. I also think that is gonna feel it. That's a hook. That's a hook melody. I mean, that's a very substantial singable melody. And so it's not just that this song is sort of like throwaway other than guitar part. That's not it. I mean, I ain't gonna feel it that I belong. I feel that I could be someone, That's a hook too, by the way. The repetition of that, I don't sleep on the genius of even that. And so I think it has hooks. Obviously, it's got huge hooks, but it's sneaky. I remember hearing this song the first couple of times, and before I was even writing songs, and being so sort of let down by that that my car beats fast, felt like I was just like, man, that's not where I wanted this song to go. I wanted to have like a hook, but then the payoff, that's definitely a hook. So it does kind of eventually get there. But so I think, to me, P-Dub and everybody else who's listening wondering, I think it is the juxtaposition. I think it's the beautiful guitar part against a really random, weird melody and verse that actually makes it better. Each of those things make each other better. Because I think if you had a song that had a bunch of words and an uninteresting guitar part, you've heard that folk song a million times. And then you've also heard the guitar part melody where it follows the melody of that you're singing that follows the guitar part that can be cool but can get really uninteresting. So I think it's actually both those and the subject matter. I think the fact that it feels so pedestrian and this woman sort of staring out her window or something, just writing whatever she sees, sort of gives this beautiful guitar part even more weight and sort of concrete to be profound. Not to mention that, like I said, the hooks that are already in there that, you know, that really do make it listenable over and over and over.
Hot take 2.
So Brycers, which is Brycers on Instagram. I should figure out these real names because it sounds like a robot. Brycers, the robot ninja chopping tomato machine. So and this is what Brycer said. Lisa Loeb has the greatest ever written song that doesn't have a chorus. I'm going to push back a little bit of that with Stay, which is an amazing song. Are there any other songs without a chorus that have made it big like that? So here's what's crazy about Stay, and this is, I love these questions. I actually did the deep dive to realize that Brycers, he or she, is absolutely right. Stay doesn't really have a chorus. It repeats the chords, and I love when songs do this, where they repeat the chords, but there isn't a repeated melody and or lyric in that song ever, except the very end, where she says, "You say only hear what I want to." She does that at the very beginning. I think that's lyric. She says twice, but so she only does that twice. That's the only time she does that, and that's a real coup. You're pulling off quite the thing when you can do a song that's a hit like that doesn't actually have a chorus. Some of the trick that's happening is your ear gets used to the chords, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is where the chords change, so this must mean it's a chorus, even though she doesn't actually sing the same thing again and changes the melody pretty much every time too, which would take me forever to show you on guitar. I thought about doing it. I was really close. I studied enough to do it, but it's not worth doing. Just go listen to the song. But I think you'll be amazed to realize, which is a great call by Brycers here, that she never repeats anything. It literally is just it feels like a free flow of information that's incredibly singable and hooky and memorable. So to answer the question, now I did a little bit of a deep dive here, but I didn't come up with much. I'll tell you the one song that I can think of that is very much the same vibe is Jeff Buckley's Last Goodbye. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but in that song, Jeff never repeats the same thing. He just kind of sings through the song. It's an incredible tour de force. Vocally one, but just of like memorable things that never repeat, which is exactly what Lisa Loeb's song is. And I love that. I love that it keeps going, it grows and changes and changes. Now, there were a lot of close calls on this. I looked up some articles that had songs, without choruses, but it wasn't true because they would repeat things. And to me, I was looking for a song that just never repeated anything. It just went the whole way through and never repeated anything. Like they tried to say that Drive by R.E.M. was like that, which it's not, because it has a part that repeats. Losing My Religion, I've read an article that said it doesn't have a chorus, but I would call it a chorus because it sings the same thing twice throughout the song. And some people would say, oh, it's like another verse, but it's the same lyrics and everything. So to me, I would sort of air quotes call that a chorus. Bohemian Rhapsody fits, but Bohemian Rhapsody isn't a song. It's a work of genius that needs to be hung in a museum somewhere. It's like, it's too good to even be called a song, in my opinion. So because it's like a period piece / art music installation. So I don't even consider that, though it doesn't ever have a chorus. And it doesn't repeat. I guess it does repeat at the very end. That's funny. Another close call, and I'll really enjoy. I got a kick out of this because it's the exact same thing that Lisa Loeb does. Is "Hey Jude" by the Beatles, which it sort of messed with me because I realized he does do the. They repeat, which I'm blanking right now, but they repeat that part at the end. About her. I've got Lisa Loeb stuck in my head. But anyway, but what's similar about Hey Jude and Stay is that they both end the songs with the first part of the song lyric, but it's kind of quickly passed through. So I thought that was kind of fun that both those songs are the same that way. These are hard songs to come by, especially not just folk songs, because you can write a million songs that never have like a chorus and they just have verses. But I think when you have songs that actually have chords that change, so it feels like it's a chorus, but then every time those chords change again, they're not the same melodies. That's a real feat, and I think it's especially a feat in sort of the pop, rock, popular music canon. It's really hard to find those.
Hot take 3.
All right, I got to give some big props here to the Warren David on Instagram. This was a really great question that was so fun to figure out. So this is the question asked: are there any covers that you think better fit the song than the original? And what about those covers made it stand out? I wrote a little blurb after this to there's a little asterisk I have to put to this. This is a taste question, which is tricky because, you can go hear someone cover a song that you love, and then you may go, oh my gosh, I like this guy's song, this version better than the other. And the guy next to you is like, oh, I like the first one better. So I think that it's a taste question a little bit. So what I try to do is get data on them, meaning, did the song chart higher? Did the newer version of it chart higher than the old one? Did the newer one do more for the artist's career than the first one did? Did it sell more records than the first version did? And it's fun too, because usually you would think the original versions of things always outshine the cover. But, a lot of times, because that's what you're used to, but a lot of times that's not the truth, because, and I wrote this too, the new versions of things can be more potent because it's newer. It has a newer sound. It has better sounds. The microphones sound better. The machines that the music is running through as it's recorded sound better. So it just sounds better. It doesn't sound as old and, hissy or whatever. So new recordings have a little bit of a cheat code on the old recordings because they just are going to sound better. It has a drum loop, and that sounds hip and cool, versus like some guy playing drums on it 30 years ago. So I think those are important things to add to that. But there were a lot of these. I found some really great articles on this. So some of this is me cheating, but I wanted to add my opinion to these, 8 or 9 that I thought were good examples of this. So one of this would be Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley. So the first version of this was by Leonard Cohen, which I think most people would agree with me that Hallelujah, that Jeff Buckley's version of this is the best version of this song. And I think it's because he's probably one of the best singers that's ever lived. And not just could he sing, but his performance of this song is so angelic and aching. And I think I've seen where Leonard Cohen loved it too, because it's like, how do you write a song that needs to be sung like this? And then once it does, you're like, I don't know, I like mine a little more. And Leonard Cohen, God bless him, was not the world's greatest singer, and Jeff Buckley just might be. So I think that was an incredible example of when you have a song that finds a singer that you go, oh my gosh, like that is incredible, which is kind of what happened on this next song too, with I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton / Whitney Houston. Fun fact about that song, she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You, I think in the same day, if not the same morning, Dolly Parton did. But again, this is something where you have Dolly Parton, who's an incredible singer, but then Whitney Houston, who's undoubtedly one of the probably best 20 singers that's ever lived. And it was a newer version. It was captured in a way that was so different and so much more, just from an audible sense, it sounded better. Just from just hearing it, you could hear her voice, and it was just massive. Plus, I think soundtrack songs sometimes get like a cheat because you associate them with the movie, and the movie was a big hit. Another one, Respect by Aretha Franklin, was originally an Otis Redding song, and I think that one works well. And I'm not going to say better than Otis, because Otis is amazing, but hearing a woman sing Respect is a very different thing than hearing a man sing Respect. I think that helped out a lot. Hurt by Johnny Cash, that was originally a Nine Inch Nails song. That's a great example, and a lot of these, and I'm going to talk about after this, are like this, where you didn't cover it in the style of the original song. Hearing I think he was in his late 80s, early 90s maybe when Johnny sang this. Hearing what he's singing is so different than hearing a young, sort of computer metal band or whatever you would call Nine Inch Nails hard rock singing Hurt. It's totally different because it transforms the song. It's so much more gentle. It's him and an acoustic guitar, and you can just really hear it. So that's one of those. Another one, Killing Me Softly by the Fugees, was originally a Roberta Flack, and that's exactly what this song, it sort of exemplifies what I meant. And when you put something to an updated genre, like R&B soul in 1990, whatever that was, is so much different than it was in the 70s when that got released. It had a loop. It felt good. It was a lot more funky and soulful. Downtown Train by Rod Stewart is another funny example of a Tom Waits song. Tom Waits is one of the greatest songwriters in the history of time. But, I mean, it's hard to say he's a beautiful singer. Now, he's an incredible singer, yes, because that guy can communicate like nobody else when he sings, but he's not somebody I think you'd be like, I want to hear him sing the Star Spangled Banner, although it'd be very entertaining. But then you have Rod Stewart, who is a really beautiful singer, singing a song, and all of a sudden it's transformed that way. It's just kind of what happened with Hallelujah. Just a couple more, Gotta Get You Into My Life by Earth, Wind & Fire, and originally by the Beatles. This is I love when covers do this. When the Beatles is a straight ahead kind of, gotta get you into my life, boop, 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 boop. It sounds like white English boys singing it, and then you get Earth, Wind and Fire, and it's literally like what happens if a soul band covered this song, and they just crush it. I like their version. I like the original one. I love the cover of that with Earth, Wind and Fire because they do everything right to make it funky. Finally, this was a fun one. Neil Diamond's Red Red Wine that was then covered by UB40. That's where you show again what a genre change can do to a song, because you have Neil Diamond's, which sounds kind of like this. It sounds like an Italian wine song. I think it's just kind of lopes along, and then UB40 makes it reggae, and it's a super hit. And I'll say this finally. You never know. I think that's what's fun about songs, and great songs can be interpreted different ways and work in different ways, no matter what genre you put them in, because the melodies work and the sentiment works. And those are the songs that are really cool to me. And that's why I chose those songs. And I think that's why it's such a fun question to answer, because cover songs that are great can be covered a million times and they're still just as good as the first iteration of that song.
Hot take 4.
This is a fun one, especially for the drummer and me. Jesse Mutz asks this: Pink Floyd's song Money is in 7/8. And it feels so natural. Any other odd time signatures in pop music beyond 3, 4, and 6? So here's what I'm going to try not to get too complicated. You can look this up on your own if you want to like a deep dive. But basically, there are two main time signatures used in popular music. One is 4/4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So your 2 and 4 in a 4/4 bar are your snare drum, and usually your 1 and 3 are your bass drum. That's what beat it is. So, you hear a million songs that. The other is 6/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That, right? So that's really the main two time signatures. So when he says, are there any other odd times? That means songs that we'll get into that. We'll get into that as we go. So let me say this as we talk about odd time and odd time signatures. For those who are wanting to really do kind of a fun little research on their own, 3 really great records that I would consider popular records that were pretty significantly odd time signature heavy are Dave Brubeck, which, yes, is an old jazz record called Time Out of Mind. Sting, 10 Summoner's Tales, which is If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, I think is on there. It's a great record, probably my favorite record of his. And then Soundgarden, Super Unknown, which had Spoonman and Fell on Black Days. And I love all 3 of those records, but a lot of odd time signature stuff on those. So when he says, as Jesse asks, what are the other songs that would be songs that were popular that had odd time signatures? So actually, Dave Brubeck's Take 5, that's in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So that's in 5. That's in 5/4. Here's what's tricky about it is a lot of people are like, well, why are you telling us a popular song that's a jazz song? Fun fact: biggest selling jazz single of all time. That record is also a huge hit record too. Another one, Say a Little Prayer by Aretha Franklin. It uses, now I cheated on this. I found a great article that had these. So it uses both 10/4 and 11/4 as well as measures of common time. So you guys know, say a little prayer for me. So that was, or say a prayer for you. Both, either me or you, we both in prayer. Another one is Salisbury Hill. Salisbury Hill. God, that's hard to say. By Peter Gabriel. Bum 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. That song is so good. And it's in every movie trailer ever known to man. Another one, Spoonman by Soundgarden. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So it's kind of a slow 7, but which was me running in high school. But Spoonman, that record, Super Unknown, I didn't like alternative rock at all. Like I literally didn't have any of those records, anything. I moved to Knoxville when I was an upcoming junior in 1994, and that album came out, and a friend of mine who was kind of like cool and alt rock used to play it on our way to school every morning, and I fell in love with that record, especially the drummer in me, because Matt Cameron, who now plays for Pearl Jam, played for Soundgarden at the time, and he's kind of like one of the OG odd time hard rock drummers. That guy is a monster. And then lastly, a really fun one, Hey Ya by Outkast. It has a 11/4 time signature, and I'm completely ripping this off an article. 11/4 time signature was best counted as 3 measures of 4/8, 1 of 2/8, and 2 of 4/8. So if you ever listen to that song, you'll get it. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah. It's weird. And if you ever listen to it, you probably know like something's weird here. And a lot of time signature stuff like that, especially songs like Hey Ya, can be counted a lot of different ways. But either way, it's an odd time signature. It's not just 4 or 6, not 4/4 or 6/8. And these songs are fun to sort of sniff out and find, and you probably know some that I'm forgetting, but these are the ones that I thought were really significant.
Hot Take 5.
This last question was like a big hug to me. It felt like a question hug, that's going to be my name of the next funk band I'm in. Question hug, tonight at the Roxy. So Emma Hammond-Tree, which I'm assuming her name is Emma and not Emma Ham, and then the last part of her last name is Montree. Emma Ham Montree. But Emma asked this very great question: how does being a songwriter work? Do you sell rights to your songs permanently? Do people whose songs get covered over and over get royalties for every cover, etc.? Super interested in the ins and outs. So I'm going to try to explain this in a way that doesn't get too heady, because it can get, I wouldn't call it really confusing, but it can get a little confusing. And I think it has a lot to do with what I talk about elsewhere on the podcast. And so I think it's good to sort of address this now, because it'll inform a lot of other conversations that I've either had or we will have sort of moving forward, or points in hot takes that I make. So basically, that's exactly right. Emma, you nailed it. When you write a song, you then, assuming that someone doesn't own or co-own your publishing, which is your songs, let's don't get into all that. Let's say I write a song and I'm not tied to any business or anybody. I own my own songs. If I write a song, I then own that copyright. Now, when somebody goes out and records that copyright and it goes out, that song, and it goes out into the world, I get paid for every time that it's played on the radio. I get paid for every time that it's played at an arena or played in a live music setting by a band or an artist. I also get paid every time that it's played on TV. Any media as a songwriter I get paid for. And obviously you add a co-writer to that, meaning someone you wrote it with, and you just start splitting it like a pie. And I'm not going to get into publishing and co-publishing and stuff. I may talk about that someday. But basically, so when someone, I get asked this all the time, especially with God Gave Me You, a song I wrote that Blake Shelton covered and was a big song for him. People always ask, oh, you still selling your songs? Or I see you sold that song to Blake. I didn't sell that song. You can sell your songs, which I'll talk about in a second, but I still own that song. So the beauty of that song, and what's really fun about songwriting and when people cover your songs, is that, every time Blake had that song played his version, or he was out playing that song on the road, I was getting paid for him playing that song. And so it's a really cool gig if you can get it, because you can stay home and watch Stranger Things at night, and someone is out rocking a mic to thousands of people and you're getting paid for it. So it's a really great it's a really great setup that way. And then too, if you own the copyright, you can sell the copyright. So that means somebody could come to me and say, hey, Dave, I want to buy God Gave Me You from you. And what you do in that situation is a lot like selling a book of business. They sell it on futures, which means they predict what it will make according to what it's made over the next 10 years, 15 years, if you're really lucky. And then they pay you that, and then you don't own the copyright anymore. They own it, but you got paid up front for what they think it probably was going to make. And that's your sort of risky cash out, and it's their risky payout. And so that's kind of a whole, again, we can cover this stuff more later, but yes. So I think the main point I want to make is that when someone covers a song that I write, I didn't sell the song. They're like leasing it and paying me. It's almost like they're paying rent on a song. And every time that they play it, I get paid, or it gets played on the radio, I get paid, or every time it gets bought on a CD, if you guys remember what those were, on a record, or on Spotify, those get played. As a songwriter, I get paid for that, which is really awesome, and I'm thankful for. Yes, I am. And before I go, a quick heads up, make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. And if you wouldn't mind rating the podcast, that'd be better than tickling a baby and listening to that sweet little giggle. Also, share with a friend. And if you don't have a friend, that's okay. I don't really either. Just recommend it to me on my socials at Dave Barnes Music, because I've actually never listened to this podcast. It's just too much Dave. And yes, that's a thing. Well, that was really fun. I feel like I say that at the end of every podcast, but I really do have a blast doing these. And I think sort of especially these Q&A ones, because it's not things I'm naturally thinking about. I have to sort of find out things and do some deep dives. And it's sort of cyclically, whoa, is that a word? Beneficial for me, because it's also what I do for a living. So I end up getting really inspired because I'll see some songs, or, I'll have some moment where I go, oh my gosh, I forgot about this song. Or I didn't know that song was an odd time or something. And then it makes me want to write songs, or it just gets me inspired, which is a win. So ultimately it is sort of all about me, I guess. But I'm really thankful you guys tagged along. And I feel like I learned a ton. And I hope that you did too. But I'll tell you one thing we didn't learn. And that's that pop supergroup Gnarls Barkley was named after NBA star Hakeem Olajuwon. All right, well, thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you next time on
Dave's 5 Hot Takes. Yeah!